We are here with Mr. Matt Reilly. I'm excited to take a look at this opportunity. Um, I really do want to talk about the importance of getting active, getting loud in here. I'm going to go ahead and send out a message for anybody that's interested in joining us. I'll be very surprised to see how many people show up on a Friday night to talk about real estate.
How you won't need to be on a call for this, right? So I should be able to just call directly from my phone and just put it on speaker, right?
Exactly, yep.
So we should be good.
All right, perfect.
And and I can put it on speaker, and then I'll just turn the volume, just manually turn the volume down on my computer, so that way I don't hear any like the tags or anything like that.
Cool, cool. So yeah, we got a couple people popping in, and before we hop, Matt's gonna hop on the call. He's gonna talk to the seller, grab some more information. He's gonna show you guys literally everything you've got to do to turn a lead, a creative lead, into an underwritten deal. So we did this before. The audio got kind of messed up, so we're running it back. Huge shout out to everybody that was on that first one and everybody that's in here for the second. A little bit of backstory on what happened was, just because I was talking about it in the chat and showing people really what we're up to, Matt and I were able to negotiate a $0 down Subto deal with a guy out in Killeen, Texas, and that started to get one of my friends thinking about creative situations, right? Creative solutions to seller problems. And the other day on the phone, he was talking to a lead, and the lead literally told him, I said, he wanted to be out of the situation. He doesn't care if somebody took over the payments on that property. And so he brought it to me. I know Matt's the creative guy, so I brought it to Matt. And now Matt's going to give this guy a call, see what's going on. If we can get some numbers to underwrite the deal, we'll underwrite the deal, and we'll pitch something creative, a creative solution to his problem.
Yeah, what's crazy is the person that brought this to us is a big dog in the space. So, just never knowing. I thought, that this person would be doing creative, but again, even with this person being a big dog in the space, not having that ego and being like, I'm going to figure this out myself, and pitched it right to like, hey guys, got this person on the phone. I heard it. They talked about it. Here, you handle it. You guys are this is your expertise. You guys take so again, not having that ego and knowing when you're hearing it and being able to send it to the hopefully appropriate hands here. I'm going to try to record on my side. What do I want to do here? Can I shrink this? I'm going to do custom size. Bear with me for a second. I'm going to take Steve's advice here. I'm trying to record on my side while John records on his. Hopefully. Three, two, one. All right. In theory, we're recording on my side. So I texted the seller beforehand, and he actually called me while you were doing that intro. So I said I was going to give him a call back in 2 minutes. So without further ado, let's see if we can have another good phone call. You guys can hear me, right? Everybody hears?
Everybody's here.
Everybody is here and can hear.
Can we drop some happy Matts in the chat? Who can hear Matt, man? We gotta know.
Otherwise, I'll make this call by myself. No point in doing it in front of everybody. I don't enjoy this. I just want everybody to know this. This is not an enjoyable thing for me to be doing is live seller calls. But we got to do what we got to do on a Friday night.
Crazy, the dedication to the game.
You and I could be doing a lot of different different things here on a Friday night, and here we're doing a live stream for the community to do yet a third seller call on a subject to deal in the same week, pretty much. So, all right, here we go.
Hello?
Hi, is this Maverick?
Yeah.
Hi, Maverick. This is Matt Reilly. How are you? Apologies about that missed call.
Oh,
Uh-oh, that might be my service. I've been having Wi-Fi issues all day. Can you hear me?
yeah, it's me.
Okay, you out in the
I'll pull over. I'm gonna pull over here when I get to this parking lot.
you out in the mountains out there?
Yeah, between my house and Reilly, that's really bad.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with me. I'm in the Tennessee mountains out here, so I don't know if it's all since this morning. It's been brutal, so I understand. Take your time, be safe, pull over, let me know when you're ready, and I won't take up too much of your time either. I'll let you get back on the road.
All right, what's going on?
So I believe Ben, I don't know when you two spoke about that property, the 248 Klein property.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys discussed numbers or what was actually discussed on the call, but I kind of wanted to just see, if there was a way for me to get involved somehow, if I could possibly provide a structure that makes sense to you, that would allow you to, move or whatever else you're doing with your life, move on to that next step with the least amount of, complications. Path of least resistance.
Okay, I haven't talked to anybody. Nobody's given me any numbers. Everybody just says they're gonna call me back, and I never hear back.
All right. Well, I'll be the first one. So, Ben spoke with you, and I was supposed to. We were supposed to get on the phone or attempt to get on the phone earlier today, probably around 2 or so. But I just again, my Wi-Fi has been absolutely brutal. So this was the first time I was able to get on the phone. So I believe you guys were discussing. You wanted to sell. I believe you're moving out of Colorado as a whole. There was some talks about. It appraised for $655,000 2 years ago. So I believe some numbers were discussed. And again, I just wanted to see what your current situation was and how I could potentially help. I don't know if you've thought about listing on the market or where you currently are in your headspace right now.
No, I won't list with the realtor. I don't want showings or anything like that. That's why I've been dealing with your topic. But he's just trying to see, where we're at. And I can't get anybody to give me a straight answer. Everybody's okay. Let me get a little information. I'll call you back. Calling me back as 2, 3, 4 years later. It's just crazy. I mean, nobody will tell me anything.
Yes, that's, unfortunately, that's there's a lot of people in this space in real estate. I mean, whether it's real estate agents, investors, you got to go down the line. You got to call 5, 6, 7, 8 of them before one of them will pick up their phone. So, as soon as I heard that Ben spoke with you, I tried getting on the phone with you as soon as possible. And my goal here is to get all the information as possible. And that way I can pretty much give you an answer on the phone or kind of give you a direction of where I might be able to go. So that way you're not hanging out any longer without, the what ifs or what's going on or anything like that. I want to try to help out if I can. I just did a conference call earlier with a seller and an agent. We were on the phone for about an hour. So I'm always happy to help in any way that I can. So sounds like you don't want to list with a realtor. You don't want to do the showings. You don't want to do any of that. I don't blame you. I just sold a condo of mine a couple of years ago, and it was brutal. I hate doing the showings. I hate having to keep it clean and deal with people coming in and out. So I wanted to see. So can you speak to? I was trying to look it up. It looks like a smaller part of Colorado, which I'm sure you can attest to. Can you speak to some of what you think the value would be? The information that I got was, again, it appraised for $655 in 2022. Your current mortgage is about $500,000. You have a great interest rate, 3.5%, and the estimated current value is somewhere around $540,000. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, which is kind of crazy because, prices have been skyrocketing up here, and then bam, I get the appraisal. and now it's worth 100,000 less. Years later, that's crazy. I think all this because interest rates are so high, so the price has to be low. And we're not.
I'm sorry, sir. Your service. I'm trying to keep up with the conversation, but you're really going in and out on me there. I may have actually officially lost you. Hello, hello, hello. Maverick. All right, we're gonna give him a second to call me. That was brutal in terms of reception there. He's in between the mountains. But just to go over the call so far, Maverick is seemingly annoyed at the conversations that he has had up to this point. Sounds like a lot of people have called him or inquired. I don't know if he's inquiring with people, but a lot of people are saying that they'll call him back and then not calling him back, scheduling appointments with him to call him back and not calling him back. I don't know if that's because the property is not a good property. The purchase price is a $500,000 and above, so I have to imagine it's a decent property, but doesn't want to list with a realtor, doesn't want to have to deal with the showings and the in and out and all that kind of stuff. So for that, I think we're in a good spot. He already sounds frustrated, so I think the path of least resistance is creating a no BS, smooth picture in his head of what this could be in terms of this is how we're going to structure it. This is how quick we can get it done. This is as simple as you can possibly make it. There's no third parties involved like a mortgage lender or an appraiser or an underwriter that can say yes, no, maybe so, or kill the deal or make it more complicated or make you do extra work. None of those things exist in our deal. We are the ones that are in control of our deal, right? You, Mr. Seller, if you think this is a good deal, you raise your hand and say, I'm ready. Me on the buy side, if I think it's a good deal, I raise my hand and say, I'm ready. Nothing can get in between us. There are no other third parties that can say yes, no, maybe so, like everybody else. So I think that's going to be the path for him if he can get out of the mountains. And I'm going to try to give him a call back. Hey, Maverick, how are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna drop you again. Call me back in like 10 minutes so I can get to my house, and then the cell phone service will work.
Okay, not a problem. I'll let you hook up to Wi-Fi at home, and I'll give you a call then. And then, like I said, I should only need about 10 to 15 minutes with you. If we go longer, no big deal, but I won't take up too much of your time.
Okay.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well,
So what would you do?
this will be a longer.
Oh man, now I feel bad. But what do you think you would do if this is like a smaller town, and it's maybe not?
It's small.
Yeah.
From what I can see, I looked it up, and it's small. It's in Colorado, which is great. It's pretty. It's pretty outside of the main population areas by what I can tell by a decent amount. There's certain markets that attract those type of people though, that there will be a buyer for that type of person, especially Colorado. Like it's outside Denver by not too far. Let me see here. Denver, Colorado. It's an hour outside Denver. Out in the mountains. So again, there are markets where, if we're talking like middle of nowhere, Kansas or Kentucky, where it's a 100-person population, probably not going to be a destination spot for a lot of people. for that type of market. But then there are some weird ones like the Colorado, maybe the Utah, where you'll get a smaller market, but you still attract certain types of individuals that like to be out there. Plus, they're close enough to the big stuff, the Denvers and the big city markets, but they have like snowing or they can go snowboarding and skiing and have like their snow and adventure out in the middle of kind of nowhere in those locations. But you're still close. You can you do all that goofy X Games type stuff out there. But again, like in the middle of nowhere Midwest, those are definitely the tougher ones where, we've all seen it in like the West Virginias or wherever else where it's just like a population of 200. I have one right now that's even tough in Alabama, where the population is like 3,000, I think it is. And there's no really big markets even remotely close around it. So it's tough. It's not the greatest thing. So we'll see. That's why the numbers have to make sense, right? Like we talked about it before, like exit strategy wise, just because someone's willing to say yes to a subject to style offer does not mean that it's a deal that you should pursue. We want to try to help out as many people as we possibly can. And if we have that ability, we will absolutely explore it. But certain time you're not a superhero. Like there's some deals that just are not going to make sense. There's Colleen, the one that we got on, that was $0 down. There are situations where you might have the ability to take a property $0 down, and it still might not be a good property to purchase or pursue. I mean, sometimes it's a matter of fact. So you try in every situation if you can, but there are situations where just because someone's saying yes does not mean it's something that you should pursue. It depends on a whole lot of other factors, just like cash, right? Like just because someone agrees to sell you their property does not mean that it's a deal. It does not mean it's something that you should say yes to. Does it make sense? ARV wise, all the things that you have to pay attention to. Same on this side with subject to. So it just really, I don't know. It depends. You already disqualified most of their options, so that's good. Yeah, that guy already. Those are usually you don't want to talk. Usually you don't want to deal with somebody that's already disgruntled when you get on the phone, but it's different, again, perspective-wise from cash to creative. If I call somebody and I'm offering them cash and they're disgruntled already, they're already in that mindset, it's probably not good because they probably got a bunch of other cash offers. They're sick of getting lowballed. There's a lot of frustration from them that's not going to serve me any good during that conversation. I'm going to have to battle a lot of objections during that cash call if they're frustrated. On the creative side, there's a chance that actually serves me good because they're frustrated for a lot of other reasons. They don't want to list with a realtor. He's already checking the boxes off for me of things that he doesn't want to do, which is it's like he's in a cage. Every time he checks off a box, he's just pushing himself more and more in the creative box. And it's like, I'm just letting check off the box. It's like letting him make the decision for himself. I'm not going to sit here and convince you of it. I'm not going to sit here and persuade you or pitch you. I'm just going to have a conversation with you. And through that exploration of conversation, you're going to push yourself into that creative box. I don't even have to do that for you. And then I'm going to tell you how simple we can make that process compared to all the other things that are frustrating you or going to potentially frustrate you by going a different avenue. Like cash is not going to serve this guy most likely because he owes $500,000 and the value is $540,000. So even a cash offer is not going to be able to come in low enough because he owes and he's not going to want to pay. He doesn't want to list with a realtor because he doesn't feel like doing showings and walkthroughs and all that kind of stuff. He's moving out of state, so he has no emotional ties to that property or location anymore. So, again, leaving that mortgage in place and us doing a wrap or whatever we might do might make sense. He might not give a shit at all. As long as I can move on with my life and move out of Colorado and go to wherever I'm going next, and these obligations are taken care of for me, I don't care. This is way easier than anything else I'd have to deal with. Because even on the market, again, where he would possibly have to list at, I mean, if his value is 540, let's run those numbers real fast. If his value is 540, and that's where he were to list at, with 8% in fees, which is commission, closing costs, paying off the lender fees, property tax prorations, and everything else, that's 496,800. So that's him writing a check, bare minimum, for $4,000, $5,000. So I don't know. We'll see.
I think that he might accept 0 down if he really has that motivation.
From the notes that we got when we were passed over this lead, that was the phrase that caught my attention was, I would pull it up right now, but I'm screen sharing my screen and I don't want to dive into the DMs, but something to the effect of would be willing and open to just let somebody take over so he could be done. Which, again, it's that two-part trigger, right? Like you hear that and you're like, okay, this side of my brain's like, that's exactly what you want to hear. And this person has extreme motivation and everything else. But the other side of my brain's going, okay, well, how complicated is this deal going to be then? You know, like the small market, how upside down is he potentially? There's a lot of different things that, you know, that side of my brain starts thinking about. So I get excited, but I have to come back down to earth and see, you know, how. We'll see though. Hey,
We'll see when this guy gets back. We'll hop back on the phone with him. But I think it's just so important, ladies and gentlemen, that you, when you're on the phone, just be mindful of the different types of situations that these really distressed sellers find themselves in, especially when they have a mortgage and they just want to be done. Like Matt's saying, you know, this guy has 0 emotional tie to the property. He's about to leave the entire state. Kind of same situation, you know, with the last $0 down deal that we put under contract where this guy had to leave. You know, he didn't really have a choice and he couldn't sell because he's upside down. So he wouldn't net anything even if he sold it at the peak of the market in its current condition. So finding situations like that where people are in a financial situation where they have to move or they have to sell, and if they sell, they have to write a check. That's where, you know, something creative can come along, you know, assuming that the interest rate is low enough, right? Because I think that's important too. You don't want to, and that's what kind of goes back to what Matt was saying, is like not every situation, you can't be a hero and save people out of any situation. But if it makes sense in terms of a low interest rate, maybe a low monthly payment, something that you could take over and maybe put a tenant there or an owner occupant and wrap that. Those are the types of situations that we got to be mindful of when we're talking to these sellers on the phone.
Yep, and like Dan was saying, that's why it's so important. Like the more, like the more exit strategies that you can identify. Like there's two different, for me as an investor having these phone calls, right? There's two different exit strategies that I think of, right? I think of acquisition exit strategies of what I can do with this lead, right? Is it going to be cash? Is it going to be novation? Is it going to be creative? If it's going to be creative, what kind of creative are we doing? Are we doing subject to, wrap, lease option? There's a couple of those. So that's the acquisition exit strategy. How are we going to acquire this property? Then also the exit strategy in the back end of like, okay, now that this person is showing interest or has agreed to this structure that we're putting together, what am I going to do with this property if I were to purchase it, or who is that avatar individual that I would sell this property to, and what would that person do with that property? Now I have to figure out those exit strategies. So renting it, midterm rental, like furnished, finder, and pad split, short-term rental. I could lease option it to an owner occupant. I could wrap it to an owner occupant. There's a bunch of different things. So you kind of got to play. You got to throw it up in the air and kind of, you know, figure all of those things out at the same time. Because again, it can be tempting, right? Like somebody says yes. Yeah, man, you get on the phone, like you said, one of these distressed creative sellers, and they're like, yeah, dude, I'm done. I'm moving out of state. I'm done. I just bought this thing 6-9 months ago, well, however long. I have no equity. I just want to be done. I don't want to have to pay. Just take it over. I'm good with it. You could like be, you could catch yourself in a daze and be like, okay, I got a deal. Someone said yes, for sure, let's do this. And then all of a sudden, you agree to something, and now you're running the numbers later when you should have ran it before. And now you're like, who the hell am I going to sell this property to, or what would I even do with this property? And now this person who is in distress thought that they had a solution, ready to go, and now you got to call them back and say, yeah, sorry, man, I got nothing for you. I shouldn't have said yes right away. I got too excited. Wholesale relist, yep. And that's, for me on the creative side, again, like I was saying, I'm not here to persuade you to accept what because I'm not telling you that I'm doing, like, I'm not pitching you. I want you to feel like you're choosing this for yourself. So I will go over all the other options first most of the time. The more traditional options that most people usually explore first, to see like, why aren't you doing those things? Why would you even consider doing it with me? And again, by doing that and checking those boxes, they're telling me why they're not doing it and why those don't work for them. So every box they check is just pushing them further and further to creative without me having to be like, hey, come on over. I want this. I want this. I never want to be in the position where I want or need it. I'm in the position as just here to help if I can and provide you with the information of how to structure this, the things that we would do during that. And if any of that makes sense to you, let's move forward. If not, I hope it sells, however you want and need it to sell. That's pretty much it. And we got to get that guy hooked up with Matt Bell, the lender. Building your wholesale sales, because you never know when you might run into a property that margin is never cash time, it's there for a flip. Yeah, or or buy and hold. Like if you want it for yourself, like there still is a lot of opportunity where, and again, you're seeing things first and foremost. Yeah, I have his contact information. So he just texted me, said I can call him back.
Perfect.
The lender that I'm referring Dan's lead to is a lender who is in the subject to space. And I reached out to him after our call and I was like, hey, I got a guy. I explained everything to him and he said, hey, I realize you're not a part of like the paid community, but he's like, I just made a post the other day. He's like, I'm actually taking a step away from subject to, because kind of what I've been saying, there are so many bad operators in the space doing the deals incorrectly and wasting these lenders' time by the same way that us, me, John, Dan, anybody really, somebody's like, hey man, I got a lead for you. And then they send it and they're like clogging, your DMs are clogged with people just sending you prospects, people that they haven't even really talked to. So he got burned out by talking to so many people and none of it really ever came to fruition or they weren't really leads. But he said he made a post and tagged a specific list of people that he will work with. And he's like, I forgot to tell you because you're not in there, but he's like, you're on that list because he told me like 6 months ago that he owes me a dinner because I've given him enough referrals that he's going to take a trip to Mexico actually. So,
wow.
Yeah. So we are, so I will give you his I'll give you his information. I'll connect you guys. I meant to message him tonight and say, thank you for that. So I'm going to call Cash Mooney. All right. I'm going to call Maverick. Let's close this before the sun goes down.
This is Maverick.
Hey, Maverick. This is Matt Reilly. How are you?
Good.
That was a quick drive home, huh?
Yeah, it's just spotty between the Bailey and my house. I mean, it's only 8 miles, but there's only service for about a half a mile.
Oh, I looked at the Google Maps of where you're at, and I trust every word of that, 100%.
Yeah, it's weird up here.
Search and rescue crew.
Right. So tell me how this works. We don't know anything about this, and nobody will tell us.
Okay. Well, let me be the first. So I don't know. So that was kind of why I was asking you earlier. Where are you in your process so far? And you had mentioned I don't want to do a realtor. I don't want to do the showings. I don't want to have to deal with all that, and I don't blame you. Um, I know you owe 500,000. I know the value on the home is about 540. So cash offers are not going to work for you because they're likely not going to be able to come in. They'll probably come in under that mortgage. So you don't want to have to write a check to sell your property, I'm sure. Um,
Right.
so it's kind of one of those things where, and I'm upset about where the market is too. So the same way that your house is worth 100 grand less, I'm literally going under contract. I have 4 units in Illinois right now that appraised for $100,000 higher in August of 2022. And I will tell you that I'm sending out a contract tonight to my buyer. I'm selling also for $100,000 less than what I bought both those properties for in 2022. So you and I are not happy about it, but we got to live to fight another day. And so basically what my structure is I have the ability potentially to allow you, quote unquote, to not have to write any checks at closing. So again, if you were to list right now for 540 on the market after fees, everything else like that, you're likely writing a $5,000 check at full asking price. If it gets anything lower than 540, you're probably in the $10,000 range of writing a check. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that on my property. So what I did on my property, which is what I'm proposing to you, is we do this a little creatively. And what I mean by that is, what I would like to do here, potentially, like I'm doing on my property, is we're going to create a second note, a promissory note. We're going to do what's called a wrap. And what that means is
Right.
the same thing that you did with your lender when you purchased your property, right? I'm sure you remember sitting at the closing table, however long ago that was. You signed that big stack of papers. Half that stack of papers was the closing documents with the title company. The other stack was with that mortgage company, whoever your lender is, and you signed all those documents. One of those documents is the promissory note, aka the mortgage, which has your loan balance, your interest rate, your monthly payments, all of the language and protections inside that promissory note, aka mortgage. I want to do the same thing with you. So I want to create a promissory note with you where you're sitting in the lender position, basically. And the terms of our note that we're creating are going to be the exact same terms as your line. So we're going to mirror, it's called a mirror wrap. We're going to mirror your underlying mortgage terms, debt, and obligation. So the note that we create, the balance on that will be, let's just call it 500,000. Let's just say that's what you owe on the property. So the note that I owe you the balance will be 500,000. I don't know what your monthly payment is, but let's just say it's $3,000 a month. The note payment that you and I create together will be $3,000. The interest rate you have is 3.5%. So the interest rate on the note that we create will be 3.5%. It will mirror exactly what your underlying mortgage is. Why that's a benefit to me is I have the potential to get into that property for less than what I would have to go. If I went to the bank, I'd have to put 20% down, 25% down because I'm not an owner occupant, I'm an investor. So I don't get access to those low down payment loans or anything like that. So I'm getting a lower down payment, quote unquote. But also on the alternative, this property likely wouldn't qualify as an investment property with where rates are today and those requirements. So I likely wouldn't even be able to purchase this property with traditional financing on the investment side. So this allows me to purchase a property creatively that I likely wouldn't be able to purchase traditionally. And on the flip side, how it may be a benefit to you, and maybe it won't be. And again, this is part of the exploration stage of, if it does or if it doesn't. But how it might be a benefit to you is you want to, I believe, move out of Colorado. You're moving to another state?
Yes.
Okay. So you're moving out of Colorado. You don't want to list on the market because that would be one of my, first questions is, like I asked, like, why not just list on the market? And your answer is, I don't want to. I don't want to list with a realtor. I don't want to have to do showings and deal with the ins and outs and how long am I going to have to sit on the market and deal with all of that and what's going to be the final sales price and all of that. So with that, with you saying you don't want to do that, and again, cash, it kind of leaves us with this, and it gives us the ability to do this in a quick fashion as well. So again, you list on the market, might be 90 or 100 days, 60 days, 40 days, who knows. Also, with being on the market, you're dealing with buyers who have lenders, right? And a lender has an appraiser, an underwriter, a bunch of third-party individuals that are in control of that deal. Where with this, it's just me and you, just buyer, seller. If you say, hey, I think this is a good deal, and I raise my hand and I say, I think this is a good deal, that's all that matters. There is no third party on my side. There's no appraisals. There's no nothing. It can get done in 30 days or less. It closes at the title company. We create that note so you have protections in place. We have a recorded note. That note will also, and I don't know if this matters to you, and we're getting a little complicated here, but I don't know what your plans are next, right? What you're going to do when you leave Colorado. But if you plan on purchasing another home, and DTI is a potential issue, your debt to income ratio, when you go to qualify, which it might be a concern of yours or something you've thought about. So because this mortgage is not being paid off, if we weren't doing anything together, I never called you, we never had this phone call, and you sold, you did a different type of structure, you might run into a DTI issue. But because you're doing a deal with me, and because we're creating this note, this promissory note, AKA mortgage between buyer and seller, you being a seller, that note has the ability to offset your DTI on that property 75 to 100% on day one. So the same way that if you were to rent that property out, the lender would take 75% of that income and offset it from that property. So you'd have about 25% DTI left on that property. Same thing with this note. The note we create, it'll be created and recorded. That will offset your DTI by 75 to 100% on day one, giving you the ability to go purchase something else in the future and not have to worry about that DTI that might pop up on that property. And then also knowing that the monthly payment you're receiving from that note on a monthly basis is the exact same monthly payment as your mortgage payment on that property as well. So you know that you're receiving that monthly payment on a monthly basis. You take that monthly payment and keep making your mortgage payment, and then just live your life wherever you're going outside Colorado. And then at some point in the future, probably in the next 3 to 6 years, we would refinance or sell that property you have in Colorado, and at that point you would be 100% done with that property. So I always say, let's say you and I agree on terms today, and we close this thing in the next 3 to 4 weeks at a title company. We create that note. You move to or wherever you're going outside of Colorado. You're 99% done with the property at that point. When I sell or refinance this property at some point in the future, likely somewhere around 3 to 6 years, that's when you would be 100% done with that property. That underlying mortgage would be paid off, and you won't even realize it. You'll just get a letter in the mail at some point in the future saying that mortgage was paid off.
But all of the equity would go to you, correct?
Any equity would go to me, of course, because I'm the one. Let's just say it's 5 years, right? So I've been the one that's been paying the mortgage for that 5 years. I'm the one that's been handling all the maintenance and expenses and anything else also that has been coming with that property over the 5 years. I also take on the risk of the same way that you just lost $100,000 in equity over the last 2 years. I take that risk on as well. So I always obviously hope it appreciates and I can capture appreciation and I can walk out with a big fat check in the next, however long. But I also take the risk that if it continues to keep tumbling, I'm at risk and I'm exposed to that as well. So I get both sides of the coin.
Okay, my wife is here in the room.
Okay.
And she's an escrow officer at a title company, so she knows about all this stuff, and I do too.
Beautiful.
Pretty basically. But what about, we can't just walk away with nothing. I have a second for 150, and then I have the first for 350 or 340, whatever it is. I'm going to still need to be paying on that second.
Are you covering both mortgages?
Yes, ma'am. So I wasn't aware that there was two. I thought there was just one for the total of 500,000. But it doesn't matter as long as the balance is somewhere around 500,000 between both.
Yeah.
And then whatever that total
Right.
monthly payment is between the first and the second. I don't know if there's a monthly payment on the second, but if there was, and that's part of my process of due diligence, right? Right now, we're kind of just spitballing back and forth to see if this structure makes sense. Now, if we can make sense of the structure, and we can get you to the point where you're comfortable with it, then we can actually talk numbers. But I would be, yeah, we would do both the first and the second, so a combined 500,000, and then whatever that total monthly payment is, combined between the first and the second as well. And we would include that in that promissory note that we create.
Okay, so the first is a 3.5. The second is a HELOC, so it varies. Right now, it's at 11.5.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 17, and basically my first mortgage is 23. It's 2270, and the second one just keeps going up. Right now I'm at 1750. So basically, I'm paying 4,000. Now that's fine. We can afford that. We've done it for 10 years. So now we just want to get out from under this, move to Arizona, get a much cheaper place, and keep going. So that's our challenges. You're going to give me something, or the note's going to show that I'm receiving that money, 4,000 a month, to offset my DTI.
Yes, sir. So what we would do is it's a two-parter, right? So first and foremost, we're gonna do a wrap transaction. And again, this is if the numbers make
Right.
sense to both of us, right? But in theory, we're gonna do a wrap
Right.
transaction where we're gonna create a promissory note and a deed of trust. That promissory note that we create is going to have all the information you just gave me. So it'll have that total balance, that debt balance of, let's just call it 500,000, and then it'll have a monthly balance or a monthly payment of, let's just call it $4,000 for round number sake. Of that $4,000 a month, whatever it is for taxes and insurance, we'll break it apart there. The second part of this is we're going to employ what's called a licensed servicing company. So if you're not familiar, a servicing company is just like a mortgage company in a way. They service debt, they service mortgages, they service notes and loans. So what we do is we plug them in, they onboard your loan, we make the payments through the servicing company, they log it, record it, create a statement, and then every single month when that payment is made to the servicing company, they make a statement, and then they release an email invoice to both you and the buyer side. So every month you get a statement that payment was made, and it shows $4,000 payment, and then it shows of that $4,000, again, for round numbers, let's just say $2,000 was principal and interest, and the other $2,000 was taxes and insurance, and then they release that to either you or directly to the lender, whatever makes the most sense. So you have that servicing company records, the licensed servicing company records, showing and proving that debt is being satisfied and that it's not being satisfied by you, coupled with that promissory note and deed of trust that we're creating and recording at closing as well, showing that someone else is the borrower on that property now and servicing that debt.
Who signs the note?
But,
Sent the note, you
yeah, buyer side and seller side. So again, you as the seller are basically the same way that when you closed the property originally, and you're signing it basically between yourself as the buyer and the lender as the lender, you're basically sitting in the lender position on our note. So buyer signs the buyer side, obligating themselves to all of the terms and balances and monthly payment and everything in that note that we're creating.
So that's what I guess that's what my question is. So does the end buyer sign the new wrap note?
Yes, ma'am.
Or do you as the middleman?
No. Yes, ma'am. The end buyer would sign that note. The end buyer who's going to be responsible for that note will be signing that promissory note and deed of trust.
Okay. Now, so if we come up with a number, let's say 500,000, and the loans only total 480 or something, can we get $20,000 to move, or is that not possible?
I don't want to say yes, and I don't want to say no, right? Because part of the way that I structure my deals most of the time is I also would pay, or buyer side would also pay buyer and seller closing costs on the entire property. So let's just say your loan balance is 480. We say 500 is the purchase price. $20,000 in equity, but we both know, and all three of us know, that's not your true equity, right? Because there's fees involved to sell your property, whether it's with a traditional buyer on the MLS or in any type of transaction. There's usually some sort of fees. To be honest, just hearing that it's $4,000 a month, I have to be smart on my side that if I were to give, I don't think I would be, I don't think it would make sense to give, and again, I know you asked that as a hypothetical, but I don't really see a situation, and I'll look at all the numbers, but I don't see a situation of walking away with money, or not a lot of money at least. And again, picking up buyer seller closing costs, we pick up the attorney fees to obviously create and record that note, handle all of the transactions, and all of that during that process, getting it done quick, in somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks time, pending the title search and title report and all that. I'm sure it's clean. But to me, I don't see a scenario where I would be able to pay out a lot or any money, especially in a scenario, again, property values 540. I always try to be fully transparent. The way that I try to think of it sometimes is, if Matt Reilly, myself, did not exist, what would you likely do? You're either going to go talk to another Matt Reilly, or if you don't know a Matt Reilly exists, your next option is either to go seek out a cash offer, which probably isn't going to make sense, like we discussed, just because of where you are with your balances on that property. Or, I know you don't want to do it, but listing it on the market for sale with an agent, and again, running my numbers at a 540, because that's about what it's worth, list price after 8% in fees, which is going to be 5 or 6% to commission, plus closing costs, plus any possible price reductions or seller concessions. That's a net of $495 right there, and you have a $500,000 debt obligation. So you're likely writing a check for somewhere around $5,000 to sell it traditionally. And how long is it going to take you to get to that point where you're sitting at the closing table when you list your property on the market? Might be 30 days. You might get an offer on day one, and it's still going to take 30 days to close, but it absolutely is possible. You might get an offer on day one, or it might go 45, 60 days. So I look at that as the alternative. And if the traditional market wouldn't be able to put 20,000 or 10,000 or anything like that in your pocket, I just don't see, and again, I want to be fully transparent with you. I just don't see that scenario for me.
Sure, no problem. No, I understand. Now, there is no need for us to move. We've never been late on a payment. We have perfect credit.
Of course.
So there's nothing pushing us out. We're not going to be in foreclosure. There's not that urgency.
Yes.
So that's why we need to know all the numbers and see where we're at. So.
Yeah, and God bless you for not being in that distressed scenario. Like, those are the scenarios you want to be in. Like, people that have either equity or they have great credit scores. So that way, even if you don't have equity, you have the good credit score. You have all the other things. You have income. You have all the other things going for you to make that move easier, to make that next purchase easier, all of those things that will come into place for that. So God bless you, because a lot of people, that unfortunately I do these types of transactions with, I would say 50% are not in your position. They're behind on mortgages. They have zero equity. I got a guy right now selling a $1.3 million house in Cape Coral, Florida. Been on the market 180 days. He's also lost about $400,000 in equity in the last 12 months. And it stands right now that if he were to sell, he's writing a check for $85,000.
Yeah.
So
that's terrible.
No, it is terrible. And so I'm glad that you guys are not in that position. Right now, your position is much, much smaller. Again, probably breaking even or writing a small, $5,000 check if it were to sell around 540. But again, anything less than 540, that number obviously gets bigger. It gets closer to 10, and I don't want to see you get there. So I guess my question to you first is there anything else that I can help explain on the actual structure? Anything in that regard that is, I can discuss a little bit further? Or do you think that you have a good understanding?
How do you come up with the value of the home? Is there an appraisal done?
No, so that's the good thing. I mean, that's the good and bad thing with me, right? Is I don't perform appraisals. So to be honest, most of the transactions that I complete, the sellers have just purchased, anywhere as recent as 6 months ago to where maybe they've been in the property around a year and a half or somewhere around there. So I know in those scenarios that they just bought the house and they bought it with financing. And I know when you get financed, you have to get an appraisal. So I know there's a loan in place. I know it just got recently appraised. I'm okay in that scenario to not bring in an appraisal or an appraiser at that point because I'm basically taking over financing, correct? We're creating a note that is based off of your underlying mortgage and financing. So I'm not nearly as concerned about the value of that property via an appraisal as much as a new buyer coming in with a lender, because again, the buyer doesn't really care, the lender cares because the lender's giving all the money. The lender's giving 95% of that transaction or 97.5% of that transaction. So they care and they're bringing the appraiser. I don't care. I'm bringing in far less than that. In this scenario, the buyer is the lender. They're bringing the funds to closing. And most of the time, a recent appraisal took place. So it's not a concern in most scenarios to me. I only did one just recently in Louisiana, and that's because they had like a $70,000 solar panel system that was installed. And the buyer was concerned about the value, so he conducted an appraisal just to figure out what the estimate value of that solar panel was to that property, and unfortunately, it was $0. So it was good for him to
exactly.
good for him to learn, but that was the only time in the last, I would say, 2 years that an appraisal was conducted on this type of transaction prior to closing. So that's why, again, it's similar to cash in the way that we can make it extremely easy and quick, except we're not coming in at a cash offer price where it's likely going to be far less than what you owe. We're able to get most people out of a property without having to write a single check at closing.
And what about the property? Do we need to completely empty it out, clean it out? Do we need to do, well, how does that process work?
I mean, usually I would say most of the time, and again, we can always speak to the specifics once we get to that point of, what does your actual scenario look like? I don't have pictures of the property yet in front of me, or I don't know what you're doing. So I don't know what you want to take, what you don't. What I will say in most scenarios, in most structures, a seller is selling and then they're moving to another property and they're usually taking all of their belongings with. So it's usually left in the same condition it would be left in, if a traditional buyer were to come and buy this property and it were to get appraised and go through that process, usually the home is left in that condition.
Okay. And then if we were to do the transaction, would we be able to stay in the home past the closing date, or do we need to get out right then?
I mean, that's another great thing about my structure as opposed to everybody else. So again, touching on, traditional buyers are not in control of their deals, like we said, right? The lender's in control, the appraiser, the underwriter, all of those people. In this type of structure, us three, buyer side, seller side, we're the only ones that are in control of this deal. So if you say, hey, I need 30 extra days or 60 extra days, whatever it is needed, we are the only ones that can say yes or no to that. So I have no problem, at least right now that I can see, giving a structure that allows you to stay post-closing, or we extend the closing, whatever makes the most sense in that scenario. But again, I've done it plenty of times, and right now I don't see an issue I don't see why that would be an issue, I should say.
Okay, because we just started thinking about this. We're purging things, selling things, and we didn't have a certain sense of urgency.
Of course, yeah.
Because we need to see if we can even sell it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just gonna walk out, and we need to go down to Arizona and take a look at a house.
Yeah.
So you have some kind of a note to show the new lender that this note was taken away?
Yes, sir.
Even though it shows on our credit?
Yes, sir. So what you just said is a very important part. So What I cannot do is remove this from your credit report, right? Obviously, with what we're doing, your loan is not being paid off. We're creating a note, we're recording it,
Right.
it's closing at a title company. But what I cannot
Right.
do is remove it from your credit report. But what I can do is we will create that note at closing, which shows all the terms and language and the buyers and the sellers. And then we also have that servicing company as well. So I also, during this process of you going to Arizona and looking, and you're probably going to be talking to a lender at some point in the very near future, you can confirm with them, and I'm happy to work with that lender as well to make sure that this is structured appropriately and correctly for you to get that approval on the next property. So we don't necessarily need to close this in, let's just say, 3 weeks, and then leaving you potentially homeless in the event that this one specific lender that you're using, because I can't speak to all of them, but the dozens and dozens and dozens that I've done these types of transactions with all can attest that creating the wrap does offset the DTI. But let's just say the one that you use says no, I don't ever want to leave you in a bad spot or a bad position or homeless or whatever the case is. So I'm happy to extend this closing out until you get that green light with that lender as well.
Do you have a lender that you're used to working
Yes.
with nationally?
Yes, ma'am. I just got off the phone with him. There's a gentleman in Florida, Southern Florida, an associate of mine just talked to him, the seller. My days are blending, but I think it was either this morning or yesterday morning. And I'm connecting him with my lender partner. His name is Matt Bell. I don't get any money for referring him. I'm not associated with him anyway. Besides, I've done transactions with him. He's fantastic, especially with these types of transactions where there's an underlying mortgage that's staying in place and then the wrap that we're performing. So happily will introduce you guys together so you can have all of those informed conversations and questions that you will have for him. Because again, I can speak on it, but I'm not a licensed lender. So I never want to steer or guide you. I don't have any of your credit or income or anything in front of me where I can say yes, no, maybe so. But I'm absolutely happy to introduce you guys to him so he can speak to what I'm referring to.
Okay.
I just did another one with him in Florida about 4 months ago. The sellers were veterans with a VA loan, and they only bought maybe 12 months ago, and they wanted to purchase a new construction home. So we did this exact same structure that I'm offering you. I referred them to Matt Bell, and Matt Bell had a great conversation with them. We structured it how he needed it to, and then he got them to green light to purchase that new construction home within 24 hours of talking to them. And then we just closed both deals simultaneously. So it was very, very, very easy.
Okay.
Okay, can you put together something for us to look at?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, of course. I never want to just, obviously I am a verbal guy in terms of having these types of conversations, but I never want to leave you with just verbal words. So what I will do is absolutely put this in an actual purchase agreement for you to review, and that'll have numbers in it and everything else. And this will be something that you obviously you're already in the title company business, so I'm sure you're already familiar with looking at purchase contracts and agreements. So it won't be language that you're unfamiliar with, but it is an agreement that you likely haven't seen before because it's my custom one that my attorney created. So if you have any questions on anything that you see inside that contract, you shouldn't, but if you do, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to go over anything and everything in that contract with you.
What title company do you use?
I will look at my list. I just closed. I don't know. I have to look at where you guys are located, but I just closed one. I know you're probably far away from Colorado Springs. I just did 2 in Colorado Springs, and then I just did another one in, again, long day, but I will look. The beautiful part about this is because there's no lender involved, buyer's not bringing a loan or lender to the table, we can do mobile notaries if that's any benefit to you guys. So we will choose a title company. You can go there if you'd like, but we can do mobile as well.
I go to the title company every day. I can do a notary. My issue is I do not want to use my company because I don't want my coworkers to know
Of course.
what I'm doing.
Absolutely. I can respect that.
Yeah, so that's just why I was asking. The notary part's no big deal. I can have somebody in my office notarize.
Beautiful. Yeah, you just let me know. And again, if I tell you who the title company is, and you're like, oh, well, that's the one title company that I don't want to use because I work there, we will absolutely pivot to a different one. So not a problem at all. Title company's the least of my worries, but absolutely I can understand and respect your position on that one. So not a problem at all.
Okay.
All right. Well, this
Do
is.
you need me to send you numbers, or what do you need me to do?
Can you please, the only favor I would need from you right now is your email address, so that way I can send over that purchase agreement, and then anything that you can send me that you feel comfortable with, you can block out account numbers, personal, anything, but anything that has to do with a mortgage statement for that first and the second, because again, those numbers are going to be the numbers that we're creating that note with. So I just need to see the actual balances from the mortgage statements and the total monthly payments from those two. So I can run all of my official numbers. I'll see it on the mortgage statement. And then that should be pretty much it with your email address. And then that's all I'll need for right now.
I just ordered a payoff last week, so I'll get you a payoff statement on the first mortgage.
Yes, ma'am. That would be helpful. The only thing is the payoff will definitely be beneficial. The only thing though is I'll need a mortgage statement only because payoff statements don't have monthly payments or the PITI breakdown on them for some reason. So the mortgage statement is the thing that I'll need most importantly, because that actually has the PITI and the PITI breakdown.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, no problem.
Well, you guys, I'm glad I'm ending my night on a phone call like this, because I had a bunch of bad ones before. So I appreciate you guys, being so pleasant to speak to. And again, anything you need, anything you come up with questions after this call, you get the agreement, you have questions, please feel free to reach out, shoot me a text, shoot me a call. Happy to go over anything with you.
Okay, I'll text you my email address.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Matt Reilly. I look forward to hopefully putting something together for you guys.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thank you both. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What are we thinking, Matt? Can we get some happy Matts in the chat, ladies and gentlemen? King of creative right here, man. Drop a happy Matt in the chat.
Now, I have a question. Does it still count? Can I still be 3 for 3 if we don't get it done only because the numbers are bad?
I say
Does
yes.
that still count? Or is there an asterisk next to the 3 for 3? PDRE says 3 for 3.
So ideally, where do you think you'd have to be at for it to make sense in terms of the numbers?
Let me look right now. My concern is I think that's a deal that I think that could probably be another 0 down deal, which is crazy because I haven't had a 0 down deal in a very long time. And the fact that we potentially have 2 in a 1 week span doesn't make sense. But the only concern is $4,000. I don't know what to do with that property, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when they said that they're making payments of $4,000 every month. That was like, oh, there's the knife in the deal.
Yeah, because like I'll look up rental comps, and I'm just guessing Rental Meter is going to tell me that there's no nothing within 10 miles. I have to imagine. Yeah, no rental comps within 10 miles. So in that situation, I'd have to just explore, I don't know. I'd have to call an agent or two out there and just see what kind of demand there is for owner occupants. Maybe we just get lucky in that situation. But yeah, I think that's obviously something that can get done. But I wanted to set the expectation with them as like, I still got to see pictures. I still got to look at these numbers. I got to get those mortgage statements to see if this is something that makes sense. I hope it does, because they're very nice people. And those are always the situations that suck the most, is when you deal with really nice, respectful people, and then you have to tell them you can't do it, which always, it's never fun. But I'd rather shoot them straight than steer them along and not be able to get it done. But that's 3 for 3. All right. I don't care
3 for 3.
what. Actually, I decided for myself 3 for 3.
I'd say it's 3
I made my
3 for 3.
I made my own decision there.
Yeah, I agree with your decision. That's definitely 3 for 3.
But yeah, where's your lead? The Austin one.
He is MIA. So before, I finally got on the phone with the guy, he told me that he caught pneumonia and he lost his voice, could not speak. I got on the phone with the guy. He explained to me, his situation. Yeah, he's in a situation where he owes, like $390 on the property, and it's probably worth less. So he's upside down. It's probably one of those $0 down situations.
Crazy.
But yeah, he said he's moved on to Austin, and he just wants to be done with it. I already walked him through everything. He tried to rent it out, but at that rate, he's going to be paying $1,000 a month, and so that's the other thing is like it's probably not going to work in terms of a long-term rental because what he could get potentially for rent is going to be significantly less than what that mortgage payment is every month. So I'm kind of looking at it like if he does have a HOA, but if the HOA does allow Airbnbs, maybe it could be a short-term rental.
Yeah, but like we were talking to Paul in the other chat DM, and he was like anything in that northeast of Austin is a dub. And I showed you the population statistics of there, like it's growing like 11% per year in that area outside Austin. So, again, like we talked about in the very, very beginning, certain markets, like when I'm working with Jordan and Sam right now, and the most frustrating part for me in working with them or quote unquote teaching them is a lot of it is not like I don't have a science to it. There's not like a formula that I can go, hey guys, this is how you always do it no matter what, wherever the property is. There's so many elements to like, oh, but Matt, you told us that if the numbers look like this, it doesn't make sense. But then it's like, yeah, but look, it's the market. Look at it, it's right outside Austin. It's growing at 11% per year. But so it's like sometimes it just takes that little bit of extra due diligence, and it's just frustrating for me because again, it's hard for me to teach that. It's like it's a deal by deal thing. So in that scenario, like we mold ourselves to always think to go after the investor, right? Like we want the investor to be our avatar and buyer because they're going to be the ones that can rent it out long-term, mid-term rental, short-term rental. Somebody mentioned insurance rentals, wraps, lease options. There's 100 things that one investor could do with a property. Owner occupants are only going to do one thing with it. They're going to owner occupy it. So I get it, but then in markets like that, depending, that might be an owner occupant play. If you can get a low enough entry where you can sneak your assignment in and still be at like 7 to 10% down, and the interest rate's good and it's a good monthly payment, and the owner occupant doesn't have to go to a bank, they don't have to get their credit ran like that and all that, like that could be a dub for them all day. So it may potentially still be worth looking into, especially because again, you're right outside Austin in that area. Like this deal that we just talked, like I would have rather talked to that seller about that deal, even if the numbers were really tight, than this type of seller tonight, where again, looking at where this property is on the map, looking at the population, like I have zero idea what to do with this property, at least right now, without taking a second to look at other things. Where yours, even if it doesn't make sense to an investor, could make absolute sense to an owner occupant at the rate of growth that the population is seeing in that market. And why is it growing? It's not growing with investors, it's growing with owner occupants buying houses out there.
Right,
so,
and that's exactly what I was thinking too. And with a situation like that, right, where it is an owner occupant, what percent down typically are you looking at, from somebody that's going to go live there?
It depends. I mean, you really want to see this. This kind of goes back. I think we talked about it before. So, like, with a lease option, the person is a tenant first. It's a lease first with an option to purchase. So, prior to executing their option, they're just a tenant who just has a lease. So if they stop performing or whatever it is, it's an eviction at that point. It's much simpler, far less costly. in a in a land contract, or if the deed were to transfer to that individual and they stop paying or they default or whatever the case is, now we're in the land of foreclosure. Foreclosures are very expensive. You need a foreclosure attorney, very, very lengthy period of time potentially. If that owner occupant doesn't have enough skin in the game, at what level is the comfortability of, okay, this is enough money down where the risk is worth it if this person defaults? If they put less than 10% down, to me, they don't have enough skin in the game to get a land contract or to get that deed. To me, that would be a lease option. Until you get to that 10% and above range, you don't have enough skin in the game in that scenario for what we're offering. Now, you have enough skin in the game from a lender, like if you get traditional financing because you went through a full-blown credit profile, background check, you go through everything. They're running 3 years of tax returns. There's an appraisal, there's an underwriter, there's all of these things included, and that bank is bringing 97% of the money to closing, and you got 3%. But we're offering a completely different resource and service. We're offering you something so much easier, so much less strenuous in terms of credit pulling and all that kind of stuff. So for that, and we're offering you likely an interest rate that doesn't exist in today's market. It's probably going to be something that's 3 to 6% or whatever it is. So for that, you need more skin in the game. So anything less than 10%, I would say, it's going to be something lease option-ish where there's an eviction if they were to mess up and default. And anything
So-
10% or more is what I would consider.
My bad, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it made me think about the deal, right, that we're doing. This guy's upside down in Texas, right? That's Subto. Are we gonna give him the deed, or are we gonna give him a land contract?
They're not getting they're gonna do a wrap, and it's not gonna be. So what's gonna happen there? So that's going to be, who's buying that? They're going to be Colleen as an investor, I think. So the only time it makes sense, right, is if we were to go, like, say we get this property tonight under contract and we assign it to somebody else. If we assign it directly to that owner occupant, we can decide at that point of, is it going to be a lease option? Is it going to be, whatever you want at that point. For the Colleen one, we're assigning it to an investor. And so they will have two options at that point. They can either take it as a land contract, or they can do it as a wrap, where they get the deed, but they don't get the deed until they do the promissory note and the deed of trust. Why that makes sense to them is because now they can do a land contract or a lease option to that owner occupant. If that investor does a land contract, now they don't even have the deed. So now their options are very limited of what they can do with that property exit strategy wise, right? Now they pretty much only can do a lease option in that sense to that owner occupant because they don't even have the deed to the property. They did a land contract. So the seller still has the deed. I'm the investor. I don't have the deed. How am I going to make money if it doesn't make sense as a long-term rental, mid-term, short-term, anything else? And my goal was to quote unquote wrap this to an owner occupant. So I can only do a lease option at that point. Not everybody wants to do a lease option. Being fully honest and transparent. Lease option is bottom of the barrel in terms of desirability, because again, I'm going to give you 5%. Let's say it's a $500,000 property, 5%. I'm going to give you $25,000 as my non-refundable option fee, and I'm just a tenant until I execute. If I'm a savvy buyer, that's not great for me. I have no ownership in that property. I'm just a tenant. I gave you $25,000. And if a default takes place at all, I'm out my $25,000 and you can evict me. So a savvy buyer is like, I'm not really into that. But if you do a land contract with them, now they have equitable interest. They have a promissory note. They have equitable interest. Now they are an owner of that property. $25,000 makes much more sense in a land contract scenario than it does in a lease option to a potential savvy buyer. So for us, if we were going after solely an owner occupant, we could do a lease option, we could do a land contract, whatever. But in that scenario, it's going to be wrapped. So there's going to be a promissory note. The investor will get the deed, and then they will likely, lease option it or land contract to somebody else.
Got it.
In the state of Texas, though, you have to be careful with that because there's a thing called a sandwich lease. So if you are not the deed holder to a property, you cannot, you can basically not collect profits on that property. So if we were to do a scenario where John owns a property and I'm going to lease option that property from John, let's just say John's going to lease option it to me for $100,000 at $1,000 a month. In a lease option, the deed doesn't transfer. John still has the deed. John's lease optioning to me for $1,000 a month at a $100,000 option price. I am now going to turn around and find someone, and I'm going to lease option to them for $200,000 and $2,000 a month. So I have a $100,000 equity spread and a $1,000 a month spread. In the state of Texas, that's a sandwich lease, and that is illegal. You cannot do a sandwich lease because I do not, as the middleman, have the deed to that property. Only the individual with the deed can do that lease option. So in that scenario, John Johnson would be the only one that can perform that lease option because he has the deed. I cannot perform a sandwich lease in the state of Texas. So you have to be very careful in terms of where you're performing certain things. It's not again, going back to like frustrating when it's like I'm trying to teach Jordan and Sam and anybody else. It's like sometimes you can't point to like a formula and go, always use this. It's like it depends on where you're doing it and what we're actually doing. So, but that's, yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, man, I won't take up too much of your time. I really appreciate you hopping on this call. I know you're 3 for 3, and whether you believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Matt says he doesn't like to do the live seller calls.
Oh, I'm sweating over here. I don't like them. I don't.
He loves
Steve
it.
says I love it. Tonight was easier because I don't know why I didn't feel the pressure like I did before, but it's pressure. I don't know what it is. It's I gotta talk the talk. I'm up on that live stream every morning, coffee with closers. You guys talk me up enough as it is, king of creative, when I'm probably more the prince or the jester of creative. But so I got to show up on these calls.
Hey,
I got to keep my rep. Exactly. And I'll get exposed on a call. So I always say, know your shit, KYS, all the other things that I say on a daily basis. So phone calls are pressure, but at the same time, again, I'm confident. There's nothing that a seller could say to me on a phone call with creative that's gonna, mess me up. So happy to do it though. I don't like it, but I'm happy to do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you. I'm gonna drop a happy Matt in the chat. All right, that was an excellent seller call. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the #1 most valuable real estate community in existence. If you haven't already, please consider inviting somebody you think would benefit from being in proximity with us. Guys, make sure to go and friend Matt on Facebook too. Matt, if you've got your link, you want to drop that on Facebook. Matt's super active on the Discord. But just like we looked at that seller call tonight, that lead, always make sure that you're talking to the seller and that you understand the seller's situation before you try and bring it to somebody like Matt to get on the phone with that person. Make sure you've already qualified that individual so we're not spinning wheels on the phone.
Yes, because that's just a waste of everyone's time. Unfortunately, it's a waste of a seller's time. It's a waste of my time, and it'll be a waste of your time. Again, do money-making activities, talk to the right people, have the right conversations, and then if you don't know how to have that conversation, give it to somebody who does.
Fantastic. All right, Matt. Thank you so much, man. Have a blessed rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you back on Monday.
All right, y'all. Have a good one.
Take care, everybody.